Okay, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we have for episode 76 of Drink with James, Jamie Beck, Ann Street Studio, photographer, finite photographer. What?
Hold it by the stove.
Oh.
It's a better sound?
Taker of beautiful taker of beautiful photos. I met Jamie almost, I don't know, 8-9 years ago through the internet. She has since invented cinemagraphs. Co-invented cinemagraphs. She has shot for pretty much every amazing brand in the world. Had your work in every magazine. You're not the cover of Vogue yet, but you will.
I'm working on it.
You will get there. I have absolutely no doubt. And I've recently dropped everything and moved to Provence for a year. So Jamie and I are already most of the way through a bottle of Veuve. And as always, I did this intro at the end, but you guys are in for a treat. So here we go. This is something, we had a conference, this is real, this is happening.
The rest of
We had a conference recently. There was a really good speaker that was saying that what frustrates her sometimes in the influencer space is that there's too many influencers that are like this, what can I get out of this? And not enough of what can I put into the world?
Sure.
And I think
what value can I give?
What value am I giving to my followers or to my people, I get that. And I think why I you're so much different than, well, most people, but also certainly the people. Weird? Certainly the people that are watching the show. Look, I used to shoot. I got out of it. I wanted to start this business.
You were great.
Thank you. But I wasn't an artist. I wouldn't be able to wake up every day. I was lucky. You got
a good eye. You're good socializing, and you dress
I'm good
well.
at drinking, and I dress well, and I had a decent eye. But
you're like the typical douchebag male photographer.
Exactly. I could have killed it. No, but I think that what I wanted you on here was because I think that every day you do wake up and you're like, what can I put into the world? And for someone who's just doing, not just doing, but someone who's doing more like style, outfit of the day type stuff. What can they take from the kind of artist mentality that you have? And I don't know if you have advice in that way, but I think even though the things that you create and the way you structure and live your life is so much different than most people, what do you think that is a takeaway from you that people could take from you as creatives?
I think the biggest thing is to stop talking at people and talk with people. That's my biggest thing with some of the influencers that I follow. It's just they're always telling me what to do,
what to buy,
and they're not having a conversation with me. It's I don't want to be talked at by somebody that's my peer or even younger, or who's comes from money and why are you trying to tell me what to buy? Get a job.
Right.
I don't know. So I just don't like being talked at sometimes. And I think discovery is one of the best, most powerful things we can share. So I like when people authentically share stuff that they discover. I'm not against products. I work with Veuve Clicquot as a client, but I also have enjoyed discovering them as a brand and sharing that discovery and learning about champagne.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't know everything about champagne. It's a process.
Right.
And other champagne houses and why they're different, and sharing that instead of just being I drink Veuve, it's the best.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's well, but why? Why is this good?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, why is that cashmere coat amazing? Or that brand incredible?
Yeah.
Or, what's the story?
And I think that is something we've been talking a lot about in 4Card recently. And when our world was starting out, that's what people did. They were just giving real advice of I actually legitimately love Tom Brown, and that is a thing that I love, and I'm excited to share it. Not
right, and it's super authentic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's getting harder and harder with everyone just being I love this thing, #sponsor, and it's do you? But do you?
Right. Right, exactly.
Because it doesn't sound like you do.
And I've never seen you use that before.
Right.
I didn't see you find it and be this is cool.
And you do some. You don't. you're not an influencer in the traditional sense. Obviously, you're a fine art photographer.
But I do influence people. We were just talking
Of
about
course.
when I first got here, the Sony
Right.
camera. It's like a lot of people have bought that camera, and I'm happy for it because I think it's a great product, and I use it every day.
Right.
I love it. So that's
And you
fine.
do some, you do some brand integrations into your feed. You know,
Yeah.
you recently did some stuff with Grey Goose.
Yeah,
You know, and-
but like that's my favorite vodka that I drink.
Right.
It's Barack Obama's vodka. So,
I didn't know that.
And it's all made in France.
I do know that.
Yeah.
And their chateau is like amazing, right?
They have a chateau. What else do you need to know? I mean, that probably was one of those days, right? Instagram too much.
Right.
I'm like, oh my god, a vodka chateau.
It's a whole nother, like, just, Jamie has seen so many chateaux. I mean, you're just on like a chateau.
I'm on a chateau
kick.
tour. My
Yeah.
dream is to buy a chateau, but like a
Right.
rundown one.
Right.
And like we're outside's inside, inside's outside.
So let's start at the beginning.
Okay, you grew a mustache.
I grew. That's not the beginning. That's the end. I met you through Tumblr.
Yeah.
You were doing a series where you were taking pictures of people dressed up like famous New Yorkers in front of the buildings where they lived.
I thought you were so handsome.
Well, thank you.
was
And
bold.
you were the you were the originator of this haircut.
That was because of me.
I had a mohawk,
That's
and you were like,
right.
"Could you comb
Could
it?"
you like tame it down?
Yeah,
a
could you
little?
like not look like an asshole?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, and I did that. And I was like, oh, this is actually cool.
And now you're on Spring Street. You're welcome.
Exactly. It's, everything from that moment on, from that shoot on, my life was better.
You
I
look
think.
so cool.
I did.
In that photo.
Well, who did you have me as?
I think it was a famous pianist.
Gershwin.
It was a Gershwin.
Gershwin.
Upper West Side.
Yeah, I mean that was my favorite photo for so long.
And I'm still into series. I don't know if you can tell.
Yeah. Are you still doing it?
No, not that one. No, I just like doing series until I just
Yes.
stop and that's it.
Right. You were at the time, this world was new. There was not that many like style bloggers or anything. So you were shooting, but you were also taking outfits.
No.
Some.
Whoa.
Not like outfit of the day. You were doing like pinup girl stuff.
No, but there's a reason for this.
Okay, hit me.
I've never actually talked about this before. Tumblr invited me to Fashion Week. You're
Right.
with all that.
Yes.
And I was like,
Rich.
Yeah, rich. And I was like, well, I'm not like a style blogger. I've like never done outfit photos before. And like I felt pressured. Like I should probably like be like everybody else and like do outfit photos. So I just did a series of vintage women for Fashion Week.
Okay.
and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, she's the vintage style girl. I was like, oh no. I'm a photographer and I was just going on this style posse.
Right.
Yeah.
So you went to school for photography, right?
I went to FIT.
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, I don't
For some
wanna
reason,
talk about
I
it.
think like just because you love Savannah,
I know.
I think of
wish I
SCAD.
would've gone to SCAD. Yeah, SCAD's the best.
SCAD's the best. If
SCAD
you,
is the best school. If I could do it over again, I'd go to SCAD. Sometimes I fantasize about just going to SCAD.
well, you like teach there now, sometimes. So
I do.
mean-
I just taught there. I just taught for the
Right.
workshop this past summer.
I don't know if you need to go there if you're teaching there.
And it was just like slide from behind the desk into like the audience, like to like the classroom.
I took my niece, who's 12, to Lacoste and walked around and was like, "There's a school here you can go to," and she was just like, "I'm going to
Oh,
SCAD."
that's such a good uncle move.
Yeah, she was
Oh.
into it. She was like, I mean, that's
They're
that's
the
my
best.
one of my favorite little villages.
The problem is that when I went to school, it was film, and I graduated into a digital world.
Right.
And my school wasn't. They just weren't a part of the digital.
Right.
So it was really useless. And I was like so obsessed with photography because I mentioned I was 13. I already had known everything when I got to college because I read the books and I took pictures every day, and that's what was my whole life.
Right.
So it was really just wasn't challenging enough for me.
And do you have a bit of that you're obviously curious, but you seem to get an idea and you're like, I'm gonna perfect this. Like, did you get like the things you do with the darkroom, the things recently like your Photoshop work has been insane. And I remember when you were talking about that you used to not do Photoshop as much, and then you were like, I'm gonna learn this. Like I'm gonna figure this out. And now you're in deep on like
I'm in deep shit now.
40 layer photos on
Yeah.
Photoshop.
Yeah.
But was
It's
that always
my
you?
worst
Were you
nightmare.
always as a kid, were you like, I'm gonna go I'm into photography. I'm gonna basically learn everything that would teach me in college before I even get to college? Is that like your personality? Basically saying like, are you a nerd?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, I should have just distilled it.
I don't know if you saw my Paris photo stories this last week.
Yeah.
I was gonna go for 1 day and I went for 3 days because I literally like hyperventilated just doing one aisle, like geeking out of like the history of photography and everything. So yeah, I'm a huge photo nerd. No, I just think I get an idea and I get into something and I work all by myself a lot, and so I just kind of go really far down those paths. But it's never planned.
Right. And speaking of not planned, why did you start like a Tumblr? Like you're in this fine art photography world, right? And you're shooting portraiture, fashion, whatever it is that you shoot. Like, why did you start a Tumblr in the first place?
Well, I was a film photographer, and Kevin, my creative partner and such, he was like, you have this entire closet taking up space in our tiny 1-bedroom apartment of film. Would you please put them on a Tumblr so like they're out there, like something's happening with these pictures, not just sitting here. And I was like, well, okay. And he's like, maybe you'll like meet some people. Yeah. Enter Nord.
Enter me. So it was very like just casual in the beginning. You were just like throwing up the photos that you kind of had.
Yeah, just scanning photos and putting them up there, like terrible captions.
And when did it get like, because we were together in that time when Tumblr was growing, and this was a world that didn't really exist.
No.
And we went on that trip, to Abu Dhabi together for Puma, which was amazing.
I would never forget you walking shirtless in Abu Dhabi after they gave us all this lecture about being really modest. And here you go, smoking your cigar on the beach with your shirt off. And I was like, he's gonna get us killed. And then you left your laptop in the taxi and went to the mall. I was like, I'm never traveling with James Nord again.
And you haven't.
I'm a woman of my word.
Cheers to that. But okay, so that stuff started to get popular, right? And like, I guess what I'm trying to say is you started off in the path of like, I'm going to be a photographer. And then this like social media thing happened and you got popular in social media. I
kind of didn't even really wrap my head around social media until maybe a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I guess this is really happening. I didn't really, because I really don't set out and like think things through. I just like, it's very organic. I just kind of go with the flow.
Right.
Just kind of like, I like this idea, I like doing this, and then I just go do this, and then it leads me places.
But how important has social media been in your career?
Immensely. It was incredible. Even today, I was actually messaging with somebody, I was like, oh my God, thank God for Instagram. It's like, it's how I get my assistants, it's how I network, it's how my family knows I'm alive. It's like the hub of everything. It's incredible.
I remember years ago, and I'm interested to know if this is still a frustration. There was this thing where, like, I think when kind of Tumblr was at its peak, none of the like professional photographers were publishing online yet, and it was very much turning their nose up at it.
Turning their nose up at it, and it's also like, oh, I own these, and if I put them online, people are going to take them.
Right, and there was that whole thing, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But I remember you were looking to shoot magazine stuff, but it was like hard to get respect as a photographer if your popularity success came from digital. Is that shifted a lot as the world has changed? Was that something, because correct me if I'm wrong, I remember that being a bit of a frustration for you of like, it's like almost like, when they tell you if you're gonna be a fashion photographer, like, oh, just make sure you don't shoot any weddings. Like, once you shoot a wedding, you're done. Yeah. Like, nobody's gonna like take you seriously anymore.
Yeah, but I mean, like Annie Leibovitz shot a wedding. Now, granted, it was like Bruce Willis, but whatever.
If you get Annie Leibovitz to shoot your wedding, that's like, that's boss. But have you felt like that's changed? Do you feel like if that was the world 5 years ago, that like?
I actually don't think it's changed that much. What has changed is numbers. So if somebody wants you and you're a photographer, they want your numbers. They don't necessarily want your work.
Right.
So for aspirations that I have, which have nothing to do with money, it's still very traditional of how you get into that world. And
to your point, you say you just kind of start things and it's just like, oh, this just happened. But you don't really, I think, again, correct me if I'm wrong, focus on like, oh, I'm going to grow my Instagram, right?
No, sometimes I do get frustrated because I'm like, I put a lot of time and work into it, and I share a lot, and it's really authentic. And I look at some people with millions of followers, and I'm like, I can't tell anything about this person's real life or what they're actually like. And I try to make stuff and really connect and be really authentic. And sometimes I'm just like, I don't understand like why I feel so stuck sometimes. But I also don't put my value on the numbers. I put my value on how I feel about my work and what I'm making and how I, that's more important to me. And if people respond to it, like, that is the best.
Right.
And I do have to say, though, there was a turning point with digital and social when a magazine asked me to shoot for them, and I was like, well, I could do it for you, and like, no one's gonna see it, no one's gonna hire me for it, or I could do it for myself and like publish it myself and like talk to people about it and like get jobs from it. It was way more valuable to me, like time-wise.
Right.
So it was like, that was different.
That's interesting. Right, because a lot of those smaller little magazines now, they have almost no reach.
Yeah, and I get great press, coverage, and nothing ever comes of it. I don't get jobs, and like a few people might see it.
Right.
But if something happens on digital, the amplification is so much more powerful.
Yeah,
and so much more powerful.
And you had that, especially I think with Tumblr when you first were doing the cinemagraphs, and it was just you would publish one. And it was
back
just
before the radar was shit.
Right.
Yeah. Like before they started
these kids won't even remember what the radar was probably.
Oh my God.
But that was a life changer.
Back then, like, you knew the guys who were running it, and when they found cool stuff and put it up there, it was so real. It was like, these are real people in New York, like, making real cool things, and like people like in our age and group demographic, like amplifying it. And it was like such a great moment. And then like
really
money
fun.
got involved.
It was really fun.
And all of a sudden it's like bullshit Coca-Cola ads.
Right.
Like,
well, and this I'm actually interested in, because I feel like when you and I were coming up in this world a bit, like everyone who was publishing on Tumblr was super talented. Or the people that were getting popular were getting popular because they were insanely talented. But Instagram, the algorithm, to your point, it really optimizes for just like kind of the
cupcakes.
Yeah, cupcakes and cookies and lattes, and so like social has changed so much since we were like, because nobody was really public. Like Tumblr was so small, it was really like New York, and it was like New York media kids.
Yeah, and you could like people would actually go to Tumblr meetups and like you would really like talk to the people.
I did that. I went to a meetup.
And you would like know people's work, and it was really fun.
It was fun, but like those people were like really they were writers, and it was across all these different mediums. Are you turning to social for inspiration as much, or is it just a place for you to put things into the world?
It's weird. It changes depending on where I am emotionally, because sometimes I open it and I'll go down rabbit holes of inspiration. And I'm very organized in my saves, like I have stuff for Provence, I have stuff for outfits, like whatever. And I love it for that. And then sometimes I go through and it just makes me feel horrible about myself. Like real talk.
Right.
Like sometimes Instagram is just like, well, I don't have that big, beautiful house. I don't have that much money to buy that dress. And like, I'll never be that skinny because I hate working out. And, it's like, some days it just really feels like I actually did a self-portrait based on that feeling. And it's like I'm naked, suspended, floating in air. And there's an arrow. I did an arrow, like Cupid's arrow.
That was amazing.
So, like it's like on topical, it's love.
Right.
But it's actually, it felt like one morning going through by looking at it, it just felt like people were throwing darts and daggers into me, like, you're never going to be good enough, you're never going to be talented enough, you're never going to make much money, you're never going to be pretty enough. And it just felt like I was being shot all over.
Yeah.
And so that was what that was.
Do you feel like, you're saying you're frustrated sometimes with growth, like you're putting all this work in, you're putting all this effort in, but like, while you don't care about the numbers, it's weird that they don't grow,
Yeah.
What am I trying to say? Is it, I guess, like, why do it? If it feels like Instagram is no longer set up for someone like you to be quote unquote successful on Instagram, because it is something that is more towards a more kind of in the moment, like take a snap of like, your outfit with a latte.
Yeah.
And I miss those like weirder, more artistic parts of the internet. do you feel ever like, yeah, like I don't really know why I'm, like you have this amazing career as a photographer that probably would exist now without Instagram, but you're putting a lot of more time than I think you've ever have before into these platforms.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I streamlined it all to Instagram.
Right.
Everything else is just kind of a regurgitation of that.
Yes.
But I do put daily a lot of effort into it.
Yeah.
But it's because like I'm gonna make this stuff.
Right.
I'm gonna make the same thing, and it's nice just to have a place for it to go. You know, it's nice to share it with people and to share my human experience and a different approach to life. Just to have someone to share it with.
Right.
You know.
And do you think part of it is that you moved to Provence a little over a year ago? I remember you saying you were feeling a bit like creatively stuck, a bit like you've been in New York for what, 10 years? 13 years. Yeah. Maybe time to shimmy for a little bit, or I'm hoping just for a little bit. It's not permanent.
Ooh.
It's my hope.
I don't know.
But talk about that, because I think that you have this life. I remember seeing a Racked article that was like, it finally happened. Like I was influenced by somebody, and it was about your life in Provence. Which it seems beautiful and lovely and amazing. And has it been that, like, did you go out there to kind of hit a reset? And do you feel like you're putting all this energy into these projects that feel selfish in a way that it's just you? You seem to just do them because you want to do them.
Yeah, totally.
How important was breaking out of New York and getting out of this space for that?
To live in New York, you have to make money to live in New York. And I always wanted to be very successful, and I love working, and I love collaborating with people, but you have to do it to survive in New York City. So I barely ever had time to do personal projects. And after so many years of running a successful commercial studio, I was just like burned out. Mm-hmm. Like I just didn't really care. And sometimes I would go on set and I just felt like I was abusing myself. Where like, I'm just pushing a button for you, and I'm checked out of my head. And I was like, that's just not fair to anybody. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to like take a break from all of it. And like I was just so unhealthy, in my behavior and my mental state and everything. And I just wanted to like wash it away. And I did. And to be honest, what really happened, like that is what happened that made me move to Provence. But it was I was coming back from a really long job over the summer. I had no summer. I spent 2 weeks on a shoot. I was coming back on an overseas flight. I swear I thought someone was going to do a terrorist attack on the plane. And the first thought I had in my mind was, great, now I'm never going to know what it's like to live in France. Mm-hmm. So I was already like pissed that like I had no life. I just worked. And then I was like, well, fuck. So I was like, well, if that's what I think, that's like the thought that pops into my head, I should probably do that. Right. So I made a promise to myself, if the plane lands, I'm going to do that. And I really did. It was like, I think my subconscious taking over, being like, wake up. Yeah. Like, go live a life. Go take your life back. And I was terrified, and I had no idea if it was going to work out. Like, I moved to a town I'd never been to an apartment I'd never seen. Like, I had no idea if my landlords are real people. It was like terrifying. I don't speak the language. I still don't speak the language. Right. But it all worked out. I mean, I did spend like a week crying, but then after that, it all worked out.
But you said go live a life. But I think that like, what's interesting is that I think most people look at your life, the life you had, traveling around the world, shooting for amazing clients, like making all this money, doing all this amazing stuff. You fucking invented cinemagraphs. Like, you had a life. Yeah. Like, and you were so in demand as a creator, as a photographer, and making cinemagraphs, as I'm sure you still are. But to be like, cool, no, I'm gonna like, not only did you move to France, but it seems like you've also just pulled back on the jobs that you take.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I was terrified. I would never say no to a job. Right. And I was terrified to not work. And now it's been the most liberating thing. And the freedom, and I'm actually like super protective of my time now. Right. Because I think the growth that you can have when you're by yourself and you start creating is going to be so much more valuable in the end for the people. It's like, just give me a break, and I'll come back to you better, smarter. Mm-hmm. We can make better things together. So.
How long did it take you to, 'cause I think there's probably a lot of people that have a lot of questions about, your last year. Because I think it's something a lot of people fantasize about.
Oh my God, you said your last year. I was like, am I dying? I read it as like, oh, I have 1 year.
Your last year, no.
1 year to live, and I was like, did I just forget something important?
No, but the last year, I think there's probably a lot of questions. Like, how long, just from viewing it, it felt like, I can't remember when it felt like you were like hit your stride,
I can't believe you actually noticed that, because I don't think people notice that. I really appreciate that you noticed that. It took me about 6 months to unwind from New York City. I was just kind of this like knotted ball.
How
I was
do you
dependent on the city and dependent on.
Right, and you got events every night,
Totally.
and you're like, we're drinking at the,
100%.
at where do we like to drink? The Carlisle, and it's this, and then all this, and then the meetings,
and then go, and like the staff and the jobs
and then you're
and
just,
the people. And it's like,
I remember you're like, I'm in a town that doesn't have a fucking restaurant.
Yeah,
it's so small.
I was like, oh, nothing's open on Sunday. Oh my God, there's no Seamless, there's no Amazon Prime.
Right.
You can order stuff next day delivery. Sometimes it takes 2 weeks.
Right.
Like you just kind of like wish in a prayer every time you click send. Yeah, it was like huge learning curve, and now I've learned patience for all of this, which is like one of the best gifts of living in Provence, because I was the most impatient person before. Now I'm very much like, it'll be fine. Everything will be fine. Like just chill.
Right.
So there's been some good takeaways. What was the question though?
I think it was like hitting your stride. You said
Oh,
6
yeah.
months, which I
Took about
definitely
6 months to
noticed. I
unwind.
noticed like a shift, and now it feels like you have a job, which is like you really have this like structured way that you're creating every day.
So it took me 6 months to unwind, and then I started getting into like the personal work, personal projects, and then like another few months of kind of like crap that I'm like, God, I wish I should delete.
Yeah.
It's so embarrassing now. And then now I'm kind of rowing along with it.
Right.
But it takes me a while when I get back. Like when I come back from New York, I can't just walk into my life in Provence and like pick up where I left off. It's like the work is from the rhythm. The work is the breath of the life.
Yeah.
And I have to like get back into that meditation of that life to start making that work again. So it's another reason why I've not been traveling as much and stuff like that, because it's very disruptive.
It messes the flow.
Mm-hmm.
I think living in New York, any city, what is amazing about your journey for me, looking, it's like, I've never had that kind of silence. Like, you wake up, you don't have a job.
No.
There's
oh my God, that sounds so douchey now.
No, but it's just like, it's
I have total freedom.
But total freedom is something that people think they want until they get it. And then they're probably like,
it takes a specific person who can deal with it, because you have to be I don't get up and I'm like, I don't have anyone to talk to or anything. Like, it's like, I like solitude.
Right.
And I really get going. Like, I have a million things I want to do in a place where there's nothing to do. Mm-hmm. But that's just kind of how I'm wired. There are some people that would be like, I gotta go, like, find something to do. Someone's gotta entertain me. Yeah, but that's not me.
Right. So you went there. I remember you were like, I'm gonna go shoot inspiring women in Provence. Yeah. And then you ended up shooting yourself.
Well, I couldn't find anyone inspiring, so I just like, I gotta shoot myself.
But talk to us. I'm sure everybody watching this has seen the Provence self-portrait series. If you haven't, you should. Talk to us about how that evolved. And those are you have some photos in there. I mean, hard to avoid the fact that there's a lot of nude photos of you on your Instagram now.
Yeah.
And not like thirst trap nude, but
not
like
oh my God, not like those Victoria's Secret poses.
Right.
Well, I couldn't find anybody to shoot, and I like shooting people. I like emotions and storytelling that way. So I just started shooting myself. But it took, like I told you, there's a couple of months where I was doing it, but it's all junk. It's just like figuring it out where it was going. So I can't exactly remember like when it really started changing.
I mean, you had the one that you had the nude you put up where you had some backlash, and that was like.
I mean, that's a whole other thing. So I had already been publishing nudes. So here's the thing: it's like when
I forgot how sassy you were as well. Like
I have opinions. Here's the thing: when I lived in New York, I was never, like, I would work out every day, but I was never skinny enough, and, you know, you gotta be a sample size, and, like, all this stuff. And I moved to Provence, and I was like, I'm just not gonna do any of my whole life, and I'm just gonna, like, live and figure it out. And I, like, gained a little bit of weight, but, like, not, just, like, I was a little bit curvier than I was in New York. And I was like, I feel really beautiful. And not because of the shape of my body, not because I'm bigger or smaller or anything like that. It's like, I just feel really beautiful because I was so happy. And like, it's so authentic. My life was just so authentic, and I was like away from so much stress and like just blissed out. I'm like, I feel great. I feel like a goddess. I feel like an earth goddess. It's like I never wear shoes, and like if I play in the garden and I like play with bugs and slugs, and I'm like rediscovering nature like it's new.
Right.
Like, it's like the new thing in town. It's been here longer than humans. And I'm like, oh my God. So I just started shooting myself like that because it was just so, I was like rediscovering like who I was as a woman and like how great it was. Like all these things that I was always tearing myself down for in the city because you're always comparing, you know? And I was like, oh, it just felt great. And then I posted one where there's like a little side nip. And I thought it looked so pretty.
Right, tasteful side nip.
So delicate.
Yeah.
It was really tasteful. It's a really dark picture. And it was very much like the linen, I had the linen blowing so it was blurred. So it was supposed to be kind of like a winged victory kind of thing because I felt victorious over my body in France. And France had given me that freedom. And it was my family who freaked out, which was like really weird to me. And like calling me trash, stuff like that. I'm like, how can you not understand like how beautiful this is? Like it just didn't make any sense to me. But the coolest thing that happened was like I really realized how strong the community was. The people who did get it, that do follow me, and have supported me, and like it really made us like bond through all of that. And so I didn't let them win because it just empowered me, and it made the audience stronger. And it like I don't usually explain what's behind my photographs because I want people to make their own interpretation based on their lives. And I did repost it, and I did explain like why am I posting pictures of myself nude, you know.
And I felt like that was a real turning point for it as far as just like, you know, like creatively as well. Because I feel like you were kind of like, you were circling the idea a little bit, and then like it just, you know, it's all been so beautiful and like ambitious. And I think that's another thing that's interesting. You know, we're in this world where everything's like immediate, you know, and it's like, how, you know, let's get a photo. I mean, we had this amazing influencer on here who was like, talked about how, you know, she stopped using professional photos. She started just taking Instagram photos of her, or iPhone photos of herself, and that like fueled her growth. And it's interesting that like that is stuff that people want. And I think that like you've got Insta stories and Snapchat and Instagram and your blog and your Facebook and your Twitter and all these things, and like you will spend, you know, that photo you did like the Last Supper.
Oh my God.
Right, was so ambitious.
It was, I was like, I think about that and I'm like, oh, is that
how much time did you spend on that image?
I mean, it took a long time. Conceptually, it didn't take that long. Like I had the idea, I became obsessed with it. I just sat down with the journal and I started putting all these like characters of like fractions of me together, you know, because I was going over like who was I in New York and who am I and all that stuff. So I wanted to like breaking myself down, and this is kind of what that is. And then I put all the outfits together, and then I just spent one whole day shooting it as fast as possible because the light changes. So I use natural light with everything. And then it's 3 days full-time editing that thing.
That's wild.
I don't even know if I would have finished it, but you know Giuseppe.
I have it. I bought it.
I know.
I have it.
He's
it's
like,
beautiful.
I need it. And it was like already late. And I was like, I guess I'll finish it. I don't know if I ever would have finished it. It was crazy.
But I think that, you know, what we were saying earlier, like, that's not how the internet thinks about things anymore. It's not like I'm going to spend a week on one photo.
No, and you know, I actually read an article recently about a girl who started out as like a Vogue stylist, and now she literally just gets booked to do fashion campaigns with iPhone, because she's a stylist, so she can style a model, and then they just go places and she shoots on their iPhone. And like Aline Fisher did her ad campaign with this girl using her iPhone. I'm like, half of it I think is absolutely genius.
Right.
I'm like, oh my God, I wish I had thought about that because he's schlepping all this stuff around, like assistants and all these people and all this. Like,
you're like 300 layers into a Photoshop file.
And like she's just like hanging out like two cool girls on the street corner, like making a living. I'm like, that's genius. And then the other half of me is like, but who's gonna remember this photo? Like,
right.
what, like, where's the real storytelling? Where's the artistry? And like, there's the passion and the blood.
Yeah.
And, you know. So then, I know.
We had
It's
that.
awesome.
I mean, we had that experience even back in Abu Dhabi. Remember, we had some Instagrammers with us, and at the time, Instagram was a joke. Nobody used it.
Yeah.
Remember? And we would like get back to the hotel, and we'd be editing and we'd be
the
like
Tumblr.
furiously editing, and they would be like sitting by the pool, and we'd be like, "What the fuck is this?
Yeah.
This is crazy. They're done. They
Yeah.
just like hit publish.
Yeah.
Like Valencia, boom, publish, done.
Yeah.
And it seemed so crazy. I did not. That was my big. I did not see Instagram working. I thought it was not going to work. I thought it was I thought it was ridiculous.
I never really thought about it that hard. This is why you have a nice suit and a nice office.
Right. Or yeah, I'm the one with the good life.
I'm the dusty Provence man that smells like a fireplace right now.
I'm the one with the good life. That's right, definitely. I want to talk a little bit about storytelling. This is a question I don't know the answer to, and it's very interesting. I think that you have, consistently the best Insta stories in my feed.
Awesome. But see, again, I didn't plan that. Like, why?
So
that's
for
awesome.
me, it feels like, people. I talk about you embarrassingly more than I probably will admit to you. I respect you. I look up to you. And I.
You're a big man, James.
It's tough for me to say, but it's true.
I'm glad it's on camera. You get that sound bite? I'm just gonna do ringtone.
I look up to you.
And I look up to you. And I don't ever answer my phone, so it's just gonna go.
I didn't even know you have a phone.
Well,
you
I
usually text
didn't.
someone else. Yeah. Anyway, look, I know people are like, oh, that can't be her life. I was like, no, that is her. That is Jamie. That is her life.
Yeah.
But you document it in a way that, for me, feels like either you knew exactly what you're going to do the whole day and you have this story, or I honestly feel like it's like you live the day and then you go back in time and you're like, okay, now I'm going to document. Now I know how to put it together. Again, I know you're just doing this on the fly, but how you make it feel like such a cohesive story, and it just has this cadence that's really nice. Like, how much time are you spending on this?
Let me just tell you a little bit of truth. Some days where I'm like, okay, so I get back to Provence, I have a few days, I get into the rhythm, oh my God, there's some cool grapes. I want to do a still life with grapes, right? I don't really know yet what that's going to be. And some days I'll start that story, like we're going to make something together, and I'm terrified that I'm going to have to go back in the day and delete everything because it didn't work, and be like, never mind, that was bad, never mind, undo. It's like, sometimes I just don't know. But it's also like, you can start going and then everything starts unfolding. But I actually use stories as like a way to talk to myself, problem solve through things and to see it. So even though there are people watching, it's like I kind of use it as like a second subconscious or something.
That's interesting. Because you definitely have two. You have the storytelling one of I'm going to the market and I'm doing this and this is my day. And then you have the more we're building this thing together. I'm taking some oil and I'm brushing the fruit and I'm putting this thing. Oh, maybe I'll put it here. Maybe I'll do this. That is really educational, of just showing people a little bit of how you're doing this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it feels so thought out, and I think
it's not thought out.
Right. I'm like,
it's very organic.
Right, which is really annoying because it's like you're just that good at it that you're just able to tell this story off the cuff. So yeah, that was, I guess I just didn't know how much you're okay, I'm here. How am I going to capture this? It's just so natural to you that it's easy.
Yeah, I try to put zero effort into storytelling just because what I'm making is what's important to me.
Right.
So I don't really try to think about it. I just try to let that be so real.
Right.
And there's some days where I don't do it at all just because I don't feel good. I don't feel like talking. I don't feel like being social. And
you don't, I think because of what you've talked about before, then you don't feel that need to be oh, I need to post. Because some days, Tim was we were talking earlier and talking through questions, what we're going to focus on, and he's we were saying yeah, some days you'll post 6 times in a day, which is you shouldn't, with Instagram's new algorithm, you shouldn't do, but you
really?
You don't give a shit.
Well, wait, you gotta give me the tips.
What's interesting is
it's like a drug deal.
Yeah, no, it's because the algorithm, once you post one, if you post another one within like 12 hours, it stops showing people the first one. Yeah, you probably don't even know Instagram has an algorithm.
I heard about it because I was angry about what it was showing me, and so I read a thing.
So if you publish multiples right after each other, it stops showing people the one earlier and starts showing the new one. So you're supposed to wait like 10 to 12 hours between posts. It's obvious to anyone that you care about the work that you create so much. But time and time again in this interview, you're like also clear that you don't care so much about, like you said, you don't really care about Insta stories. Like you don't put a lot of effort into it.
I care about them. I don't like make a plan.
Well, because I'm sure you see influencers now, like Insta stories are becoming like little movies. They're editing on the computers. They're doing all this.
I rode in a taxi to Marseille, and the taxi driver's young teenage daughter, the entire ride, she just watched Instagram stories. It was fascinating.
Yeah.
And like a lot of it just looked like garbage.
Right. But some of it's incredible.
But that's when it changed for me, and that's when I started watching other people's Instagram stories, and man, you can lose a lot of time.
Yeah.
Like a lot. Like I don't do it anymore just because if I start, I'll just.
I can tell when you're bored because I'll get like, I won't hear from Jamie for 2 months, and then she'll literally comment on every single Insta story. I'm like, where you go? She's like, oh, I'm dry. I'm in a car. I'm
like, I'm your head. You're like, it's like a month old.
Yeah. But is it for you? Is it always been that like platforms, Instagram, Tumblr, your blog, Twitter, Facebook, like none of that really matters? They're just these places for you to put your work in front of people who want to connect with it.
Yeah, exactly. And every time I do try to make a plan, it's like I keep toying with ideas. Like maybe I should start a YouTube channel and do tutorials because that's what people most like when I do as far as community, and I get it. But I just don't like being that structured.
Right.
You know? I like creating things, and I like creating things. I don't necessarily know if I want my job to be my job.
Yeah.
And I had to think about it and like get clever, and
right.
It's a bit overwhelming.
Well, look, we have a dinner reservation somewhere chic, so we have to go. But thank you so much. If y'all don't follow Jamie, then I just don't even know.
If y'all don't follow Jamie,
I don't know what to say. You're doing it wrong. If you made it to the fucking end of this video and you don't follow her, obviously you're going to. Thank you so much.